transmission. Alright, remove that diff center. And front diff center. So, been quite lucky. I managed to find a wrecked 79 with factory diff locks. So got them for a bit of a bargain, a lot cheaper than buying some e-lockers or air lockers. So rip these out and put them in mine. Okay, now we've got the diffs out. You'll see a little bit of a quick clip when I went down and removed the diffs from this wrecked 79 dual cab. So they're a bit of a bugger to remove, because what happens is, you see this is your diff lock actuator. So being a parked up wrecked car, it was this actuator, you can see it there, comes out and in as it engages. So that's engaged. So if the diff locks are disengaged when it's parked up, that cam, or the dog which does your diff lock, it comes out. So when it's disengaged, it's out like this. Get that up, and you can't get it past the diff housing essentially. So if you're going to remove a set of diffs with diff lockers, pop your axles, and then you have to engage the diff lock to push that dog back in, and then they'll come out. But because this was wrecked and I couldn't obviously power it up to engage the locker, I had to pull this one apart to figure it out. So I pulled it apart, and I managed to move the diff center out of the housing enough to push a pry bar in here, and then I could engage the locker and then remove the diff center. So we got that out, but in the process of doing that, we've removed disassembled the actuator, and found that it's pretty nasty inside there. Aluminium housing, so obviously got moisture in there and corrosion. I think on balance it probably would still work if I had the opportunity to power up beforehand and make it work, but now we've got it apart, we can see that it looks like that. We'll strip it right down and tidy it up before putting it all back together. This is the little wheel which engages it up there. So you got that on there, sorry, that one on there. That's your motor there. The motor turns the little gear, and then that in turn moves this across this one here, which engages and disengages your diff lock. So we'll strip that further down, tidy it all up. Now you can't get these O-rings. There's some little kits available in the US for redoing these O-rings, because Toyota wants you to buy a new actuator. So the actuators online, genuine Toyota ones in Australia, are over $2,000. You heard that right, $2,000 for that little actuator. So I won't be doing that. We'll be seeing if we can get some little O-rings for that. Only need one there and one there, and then we can tidy it all up and get it working again. Put the motor back together. Bearing in the motor seems fine. Clean all that grease off, put some new grease on there. Yeah, so we'll tidy it up and we'll get back to you when it's looking a bit better, and fire it up and make sure it works before we put it back in. All right, here we go. We've got some parts. So you can't buy a kit for these from Toyota. These old crappy O-rings. I've got them matched up at the O-ring shop there. I've got a second set just in case. They were $5 for those two. And we've got some dielectric grease there, which should be good enough to work inside the motor, inside the actuator assembly there. So we've got maybe $20 there worth of stuff to get it going again. And these are, if you want to buy a new one, there's a couple of grand, $2 for that. So might as well try and fix it first and then see how we go from there. Get these tiny little springs into the brushes, in behind the brushes, and then somehow get that rotor in there past all that. So this will be fun. Your O-ring on there. Just a couple little dowels holes there to line that up. Motor. Put that on. Some new screws as well. Got test rig set up. Don't mind the ghetto wiring there. She's a little bit rough, but see if it works. Okay, success. Just not sure if that stroke is going to be long enough, or it's like the gears have to be timed on the inside. So hopefully we've got that bit right. We'll chuck it in the diff and see if it engages and disengages the fork enough. Okay, let's see if this one worked now. And you spin it a bit, clicks in. This is that dog that I was talking about. This one's got a bit of a heavier duty dog on the back diff, which axle's spinning in there freely. And then when you lock it up, give it a spin that way, or one of the ways. There we go. It engages, and then we're locked up. That's that. Cool, that works. Now I can just clean the rest of these diff centers up and start putting the axles back together. Alright, we've got the front diff here. Another great wiring setup here with the switch, just to test it out. Disengaged. Engaged. So you can see these ones, this is the front locker, which has got like a spline arrangement to engage, whereas the rear locker has a bit of a heavier, maybe a heavier duty, a dog you'd call it, a dog arrangement. So we'll install the actuator on the rear one and see how that goes. Alright, we've got the old diff housing here from the HDJ79, which isn't compatible with the VDJ79 factory diff lock. So I'm sure they used a similar housing. Well, the VDJ housing's quite a bit wider than the factory front one, so the rear one fits fine. But I just need to modify this diff housing to accept the diff lock. So I've bought the gasket here. So as you can see, we need to notch out this there, and I'm just going to build up this little bit of land here on each side. I'll have to drill and tap some new holes for some more studs. Here, 4 new stud holes, and go from there. So we will add a bit of steel to that, get it ground flat, notch that out, and hopefully my bargain diff lockers will fit. All right, we've got the new land made up here. It's not too bad. Just a few where those welds are joined on there, but a bit of gasket maker of that. We'll be able to get that to seal up, no issues. Drill the new holes. Drill and tap the new holes, they'll fit through there. And we just got to, these holes here are no longer used, that one there, that one there. So we will we'll just put the studs in there and cut them off, Loctite them in, cut them off, and then they're covered by the gasket anyway, so they won't seal, they won't leak. Well, they shouldn't leak. So that's it. I can now spend some time to clean up the inside of this filthy axle housing and start putting it all back together. Stoked. Factory diff locks into 79.